in terms of all of the other roles. It's probably going to be the Tracer and the Sombra, or maybe something like a Sojin to be able to riff off of that ball going in with the pile drives, the setup that is there, and potentially even an Ana Zen to try and support it, but most likely going to be that Lucio Kiriko.
Definitely curious to see if we are going to be seeing some Zenyatta, because I've heard some really polarizing opinions on that subject from speaking with players and coaches. There are some that really feel like, yeah, there are some definite, solid options with regards to its utility, the ability, but others feel very much the opposite. It is a liability, is something that I've heard directly stated. So curious to see if that comes out. But interestingly enough, we might actually see it right off the rip here. I will say the expectation should be Kiriko more often than not, but there's certainly going to be an element of variance on display here.
Yeah, Disco Orb is insanely strong, and if you can have a look at what Cheers are running out with, it is going to be that Zen. They are going just for damage output, but it is going to be that glass cannon. If Mikey is able to infiltrate that back line, this Zen is going to be very vulnerable. It's sort of forced Dollar's hand. He's onto that Brigida, to the Lucio, which means that they're not going to have the speed boost to be able to disengage, so Saints do have mobility over their opponents as well, which is why Cheers currently setting up on this high ground, waiting to see if Love can find a first pick.
All going to be about if Neutral can be insulated. Doll's going to look to protect him. Already the dive comes in there, and it's Mikey, and Tree jumps up as well. And the one job they had, Neutral had to stay alive. They had to protect him. Unfortunately, that fight did not last very long. They couldn't accomplish the goal.
I mean, Cheers was sort of sitting ducks there, right? The fact that you're running this Brigida, you're trying to play counter dive because of it, but this is not base release Brigida. That shield bash does not have a stun attached to it, so that sort of safety net that you had in the previous iterations isn't available here. And Saints had a really good coordination as well. They encompassed Cheers on all angles, so Neutral wasn't even really able to snap kick out one of those threats when they actually pushed onto him. But Tap is still in the backline at the moment. Saints know this, and this is allowing Cheers to be able to push themselves back onto that same high ground and try and sandwich Saints in position as Love is trying to build into that railgun charge.
Starting pressure, but once again, already some aggression over to Neutral, but with some help from Tap there, Cheers manage the problem. King goes down, Lucio's out for Saints, and it seems like this is just a matter of time here. Already the flip comes in, so this is already a pretty good situation here for Cheers. If they got the flip, they're going to get the team fight along with it, but these are very quick. I mean, obviously a lot of setup time. The fights themselves very short.
Yeah, the fights themselves very short, but Saints have been able to buy themselves 41% because, again, Cheers aren't running this Lucio, so it does take quite a while for them to be able to get back into that same position, and Tap this time isn't going to have the luxury of already being in the back line when Saints push in. Worst, you have to worry about the Susie before the Pulse Bomb comes out. Pulse Bomb comes through, doesn't stick, doesn't really find the Susie bait that they're looking for either.
Also like the swap here from King. Just a little bit more pressure on the Tap, and he's going to go down. Saints now with a man advantage as they're just kind of corralling backline from Cheers into that room, but they're going to break right out. PJ goes down, which means they've lost that ultimate, so no rush available. Saints have to deal without it. Luckily, Mikey can buy some time, just keeping Doll up in the back corner. That's going to force Doll's ultimate to come out, and Cheers are just looking to sustain this here now. Looks like a little bit of a flip coming through here pretty soon for Saints, and they're going to go all in for it.
Well, remember, Cheers are actually able to use that rally. They still haven't allied the flip, and Tree now is actually having to go in on that side angle with the overclock. He's been able to snipe out Love and tries to push Cheers out of the way so they can finally find this flip, but Hades actually taps on. But Saints have still been able to find the flip now. Hades doesn't want to lose this mech, has to be very careful as they are just using that high ground and the boosters to push on to Vega. With that Zen Discord up, they're doing so much damage, and there isn't really a lot Saints can do without that Lucio now. This fight is about to get very scrappy, and you can see Cheers actually just trying to push a little bit more aggressively, making sure that Saints are not in a position to contest that flip. Cheers have equalized point percentage and now start to actually supersede.
Like King's going to be falling out of this fight. They're trying to force that recall, but they're going to go into the backline dive anyways. They rush now finally gets ended here. Cheers are forced to back up, but they're going to go off the side instead. Mikey catches one, and Cheers, they're going to be going back to their spawn and Saints back to the point. They're going to get that flip. They just have to deal with Cap in order to accomplish that. But it looks like a re-engage coming back in here. Not going to amount to very much, though. It's Cheers now at 90%. Saints taking back over at 64.
Love is onto the Widowmaker. They're trying to see whether or not Saints are going to aggressively push Cheers towards their spawn, and no one actually bites. Love had already expended the overclock in that last fight, so there wasn't any point in holding on to ultimate charge to be able to try to make that play happen. If you'd find one pick, you would have been able to try and push Cheers with numbers advantage straight back onto that point, but now they're going to have to work without an ultimate to hold their own at the moment. The tree's already got an overclock. The disruptor shot comes through, but it doesn't actually buy them this space that they're looking to try and keep Tree away with. And as a result, it is a very fast fight.
Just like that, too. You're seeing Cheers just trying to buy some time, just trying to keep that contest going. It's just not going to last long enough. And in reality, they kind of needed to have that second. They needed to have that second Zendel if they really had any hope, and unfortunately for them, they just weren't able to get it up in time. Just like that, that's a 1-0 lead for the Saints, and off to a great start, I would have to say, but Cheers definitely making them fight for it.
Yeah, you can see like Cheers were really prioritizing that high ground so that Neutral not only was a little bit away from the fight and pushed things into really having to commit in resources if they wanted to go for that dive, but also so that he had the best point of view, the vantage to be able to connect as many of those discords as possible in quick succession. Two separate members of Saints, so that Tap and Love had to do the very bare minimum to be able to come in with those kills. The problem is that by going for that high ground, Tree was just able to power slide straight into place, and with a really nice timed disruptor shot was able to immediately keep that Zen absolutely immobile. But Cheers, they think it worked. It was working for a couple of fights. It's definitely a risk. It's very much a gamble. But if you're able to win this first fight and keep your Zen set up in a place where it's harder for Saints to be able to push in, already I'm a much better fan of the positioning that they have this time around, as Neutral isn't straight in line of fire if a dive does come through.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, okay. Well, not going to work out.
Speaking of,
just as quickly it's taken down. I mean, I would say almost faster even than the last time, which felt like a speed record as it was. But nonetheless, it should be. I mean, it realistically should be cleanup for Saints. They're going to be down one player, but yeah, Mikey's just jumping around, so they're going to get the job done and off the back of that first kill. But to your point, I just kind of want to have this really reiterated for, I mean, the precise reason that it is going to be a focus for Cheers. Neutral has great sight lines here, but obviously that goes the other way, right?
Yeah.
Saints are going to be able to jump up into that sight line pretty quickly, shut that down, and get in his face. So he's going to be playing, you can even see, a little bit further back now, much more insulated.
Here's the dive, disruptor shot again coming out from Love to try to keep Saints from grouping up, but Mikey just goes and gets so much Winston cleave. And Hades had actually swapped to the Hammond, so you don't even really have something like the Diva Defense Matrix to mitigate the impact of the initial dive. And as a result, Neutral is just not going to survive for very long. Love is pretty close to an overclock, but the problem is that Saints have the distance to be able to pull back when it comes on out. They have room to give, and Cheers are going to have to find it a little bit harder now, once again, to push Neutral into that position to have those sightlines he had previously.
Just like that, back in the swing of things. This time it's Neutral getting the first blood. It'll get a little bit more bloodthirsty here as well. The continuing rush coming in from Saints, though, as they don't have King. It's not going to be a requirement to win the fight anyways, though, as they're going to quickly dust up Cheers, and Hades going to try to swing back onto the point and just kind of delay this as they do have control, but this should be pretty easy for the Saints to clean up.
Yeah, Tap's going to have a pulse bomb, but there's just so much in the way for Saints to be able to take this next fight. And look at King, he's getting super aggressive too, just trying to find that struggle pick. They know that Tap has an ultimate! The blink into melee finishes the Tracer off. Cheers do not have a single ultimate at the moment that they can use. They're going to have to wait for the full reset. Neutral is so close to that Transcendence, he's going to have it online. The tree comes in first, and he's able to cut them off at the pass. Mikey with the Primal Rage pushes them out of the sideline, straight into the Sojourn! And there's a reason we call it the Tree Show. He's absolutely chopping Cheers down.
It done. No problem. They're even getting aggressive into the spawn, just going ahead, dropping the sound barrier, Tree's going off the side. I mean, at this point, they're just playing with their food, and nobody from Cheers is in even the right state, the right zip code to get there. So Saints pretty handily finished that one out, but I mean, when you look at the way that they were playing, obviously high tempo, a lot of aggression, certainly there was a lack of burst healing available, and you kind of felt that in the fight too, from Cheers' perspective, right? When they dove in, it was difficult for them to get someone back up. They couldn't really deal with that aggression.
Yeah, as well as the fact, like, they were just out-rotated every single time the dive came through, right? The fact that you have a Sojourn and a Lucio, the Sojourn can power slide, we saw it in that play of the game. Tree literally uses power slide to cut the exit of the members of Cheers off, to sort of sheepdog them away from that Transcendence and still catch them in the overclock. And you have that Lucio amping your Winston in. You have all of that space control so that when the dive comes through, again, because that Diva had been swapped temporarily to the Hammond, you don't have the defense matrix, you don't have the boosters either to be able to try and knock and crowd control the dive when it comes on through. So there is very little punishment, or just the sheer amount of mobility that is there and available for the other side. And it was definitely something that we felt every single time Neutral's position was pinned down. He was dead within about 30 seconds. He only got one Transcendence off on the map of Lighthouse. And again, it's literally every single time he wanted to volley, every single time he moved onto that high ground to try and find those sightlines and pressure the members of anyone away to try and either keep them off his back so the dive doesn't come through, or keep them on the point so that your team can actually be able to counter dive. It just doesn't happen because they see, oh, there's a little bit of a Zenyatta showing. Okay, everybody, get into position. Winston's gonna jump. Sojourn's gonna disrupt a shot. We're gonna speed amp straight in, and there is absolutely nothing they can do to stop us. And moving forward, I'm really hoping we're going to see that being taken into account when it comes to the maps that are getting picked, because if they're going to run this Zen and rely on the Brigitte keeping him safe, it's going to be a pretty short series.
Yeah, definitely going to be a focus moving forward, because as we mentioned, there's definitely a polarizing opinion on Zenyatta, and we saw both sides of it, I think. We saw where it worked out. We definitely saw where it didn't as well. But we're going to be moving on into a map number 2, and that is going to be Blizzard World. So the return of the map that we saw literally none of last year in Contenders, or really at all in general, and now it's back. Now we get a good, strong look at things to kind of open up this qualifiers, already now selected by Cheers, and we'll see how exactly what comes into play here. Are they going to stick to their guns? Obviously, I mean, there were certain moments where it felt like what they were doing had merit. There was genuine value there to be had. And I think given maybe some different timings, may have gone a little bit more their way. We'll have to see, though. Again, this is Saints. This is the roster that we expect this year to be very dominant regardless.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately for Cheers, it was when they won the fights, they weren't those turn of the match fights that you're looking for to build ultimates and then have that snowball potential into fights afterwards. Right? So because they're over very, very quickly, because you're doing so much damage with that Discord Orb, it does eat into ultimate charges of everybody on the team. So when you have things like Transcendence online, it only really comes online once in a match. If we'd seen something like a Transcendence come through a second time when a dive is coming
especially
out from
on round
Saints'
1, right?
way, yeah, especially on round 1. If we'd seen that second Transcendence like we talked about, then it would have been a lot closer, because the Zen would have been able to defend themselves and punish the amount of resources that Saints are actually putting into those dives. There's a reason that we saw Saints being able to sort of pull the cord between playing very passively and playing really aggressively. They have to wait for all of those cooldowns to come online so that everybody, all 5 of those players, can jump the Zen at once. If you have a Transcendence, you can punish the fact that they use so much of their utilities to actually get in the fight that once they're in it, if they don't find that immediate first pick, they're going to flounder.
Yeah, so again, we are going to be moving on to a map number 2 here. Obviously, first round there went pretty decisively to the Saints, but now in a map number 2, it's going to be Blizzard World. And let's start kind of discussing the different elements at play here as well, because I think obviously we already know what both these teams are capable of with what we've seen already, at least to a degree. We have an opening look, but something that we need to kind of bring back up, because we haven't really talked about it all too much, is that, you know, Saints, they have a really solid tank that's just sitting there that hasn't seen any play just yet. Obviously, we saw Mikey there, but they've got False in their back pocket. You know, should things go to something like Circuit Royale at some point in this qualifier, you could even see False come out on a Sigma. There's a lot of different things that we could see from the Saints. And over on Cheers, they have some similar stuff going on. There's very deep rosters at play here, and while we don't anticipate any substitutes to happen now, that's something that we should be kind of cognizant of moving forward.
Yeah, I think definitely if we do have the opportunity to go to Circuit, we are potentially going to see those swaps go through, especially if Chiz really want to run this Zen. Zen was most viable, I believe, like in the last meta, and still to the extent that we've seen Zen be most successful of, is on Circuit. When teams, even when Winston, Kiriko, Lucio was just regarded as the best meta, were still pulling into the Sigma BAP Zen camp when they were running Circuit Royale. The problem for Chiz is that they have to make it through Blizzard World if they want that option to even potentially be floated. And unfortunately for them as well, if they win Blizzard World, they lose the benefit of being able to choose the next map, something that Saints are definitely going to be looking at this backline and being very thoughtful of in terms of the map that they actually put forward, because having a look, Saints are going to be on the defense, Chiz on the attack, can swap their pieces around. Saints, if it ain't broke, they're not fixing it. They have shown why this roster is so strong. Tree's had a little bit of a disconnect, so we'll be getting him right back in as quickly as possible. A little bit of a paper cut there, maybe. As we are still going to be having Blizzard World come up first, and we can really have a sort of think about what Chiz can potentially run here, because at the moment, from what I see, it's going to be more of the same. Once again, thinking that this Zen is going to work. And Zen does work, as we've seen, as we've pointed out. He can. I think it's a little bit better when you're trying to push and attack aggressively with that Zen, because you're going to be able to keep a better sort of track of these separate pieces that want to dive on the Zen, and take advantage of the fact that if Saints, again, commit all 5 members to go after one player, that leaves the point, and more importantly, a lot of space wide open for the taking.
And I think one thing about this map as well with Blizzard World, you have longer sight lines. There's always that kind of discussion when you're talking about dive specifically is, do you need that setup? Do you need that kind of pre-dive where you get into position, you take space, and then you can go for that actual engage later on? Because what we saw in the last map was that there was no setup really required. The setup was already kind of done quite easily just through neutral positioning. Here on this map, well, Cheers could utilize some of these longer lanes to their advantage, and we'll have to see if they actually can accomplish that or not.
Oh, Love is actually, there we go, I was going to say, potentially sticking on the Widow, but potentially just looking for a grapple shot, as Cheers would be relaying all of the information of Saints' position. They've seen that there is no one on the high ground. Tree is playing a little bit more defensively, as we can see Hades just going in, clearing that space, freeing it up for Cheers to be able to move and try and pincer around this point. Tap already taking a lot of damage, has to use the recall very early to get back safely to the team, and as a result, they've lost one prong. The pincer has now become one push on one side, and that is something Saints are going to be more than happy to be able to control.
It looks like Gears are trying to make Saints make the first move and just surrounding them to force them into that play, but it's actually going to be the Saints that chase out Tap, and just like that, Cheers are down a player, and Saints are just holding this corner so well. Unfortunately for them, that strategy, it was good. Unfortunately, the execution just missed a little bit.
It didn't happen as fast as well. The fact that Vega is still on this Lucio, so that he's able to peel very quickly for those members of the backline that are being pressured and get back into position before Cheers are ready to make that next step. As a result, that first pick onto Tap, that backline distraction that Cheers were looking for to be able to force Saints into turning around to deal with opening them up to be able to take the full brunt of damage from the Zen comp, is entirely removed, and all of the pieces afterwards just fall by the wayside.
Yeah, think about the price on that fight too. I mean, by the time we see Cheers even getting into kind of their setup, they're going to be looking like they've lost half of their time bank already off of really just one setup and one fight that they were just down a player on. So Saints in a pretty good position here already in terms of time economy, and you can see that Cheers are kind of going for that same play, but they're actually having Tap back them up before he finally goes off to the side here, looking for that engage, looking to just pull Saints to the other direction.
It's the same result though. Tap takes so much damage with that Zen not being there, and as a result has to use the recall very early. Cheers once again going to be stopped entirely in the momentum that they were looking to pick up. Tree sitting on the overclock, gets to Susie, so even gets to hold the angle. No possible not going to connect to this Sojin today. That's definitely going to connect, though. Qualifier is able to take love down. Kitsune Rush comes on through, and Chiz, they don't have a Lucio. They can't disengage this cleanly. They're stuck straight in the middle of it. And Mikey comes in with a Prime Rage to entirely separate Dollars, so they're not even able to use the rally to mitigate the damage that comes through from the rush. And once again, that first pick just spirals into a full team fight loss.
Yeah, not a particularly expensive fight from the perspective of Saints, given the fact that they used 3, but they were able to take out Neutral's ult, the main sustain that you're going to see in a lot of these fights for Cheers. Now it's really just about effective health pool. Can Dala's ult provide enough staying power for them to get in and get a kill? Saints can easily match that with Sound Barrier, which I would argue is a little bit more effective for what they're trying to do here and now. 45 seconds left on the clock here, though, as you're seeing Cheers just kind of posture up, trying to find a way to organize these sides, and already Saints dives in on top of them. Dala gets taken out. Looks like that ultimate was just simply not enough to allow Cheers to stay upright. Luckily for them, though, here, Moxie, 25 seconds still remain. They still have some hope.
Yeah, they've still got an overclock, but they're about to lose their baby diva. And that is going to be absolutely awful for them. Without a tank, they're going to take so much poke damage actually entering in. Plus, Hades is going to be out of this next fight, and that means no self-destruct. So as a result, Saints can get aggressive. They know that they don't have to save the Winston bubble as a cooldown, and King can literally just play bouncer right now. Pulse doesn't connect, but what he's doing is keeping Cheers' attention. They're not able to actually step onto the point at any point. And it's a full hold coming through from Saints. Absolutely dominant defense.
A lot of people going into this tournament, Moxie, I think you would agree. I mean, again, we've talked about it already, the high expectations resting on Saints right now, and a lot of people are questioning, okay, is Saints really the best Legion roster? Obviously, you still have to have a nod to teams like Redbird, or, but, you know, what is this team truly capable of? Well, here they are playing against some of the top European Tier 2 talent, and granted, there is obviously a question of, I guess, latency to a degree, but in reality, these are top European talent, and they are dominating. I mean, full held, they just dominated them on the last round as well of Ilios. I mean, it doesn't seem like there are any breaks on this train.
I mean, the target focus as well. The ult tracking is pixel perfect. They know to go after neutral. They know to use that Kitsune Rush to try and force out Transcendence as fast as possible. They know self-destruct is going to be the one thing that they have to be concerned about, because Cheers can literally just throw it onto point and punish Saints if they want to try and aggressively hold that choke and play those separate angles away from their tank, who is really the only one who can save them, barring a really well-timed Suzu coming out from CJ. So they go after the diva, but they don't kill her. And that is a significant risk in Overwatch 2, right? If you leave the baby diva, she can get a remake kill onto you. But they know that buying those seconds away from keeping Hades away from Cheers is far more rewarding, as Cheers now are going to be on the defense. This is where we should see this Blap Comp and Zen really coming into play. But Saints are very much aware of what they're walking into, and they're going to make sure that they have to walk into as little damage as possible. They take a very long flank angle going through the building, and as a result, no Zenov connects to any of the members. They've even been able to chase Hades away at such low health.
Oh man, those resources all expended just to try to save Hades, but he goes down anyways. Cheers are firing back and finding some kills of their own, but maybe it's not enough here, as Cap is just trying to be the hero that Cheers basically needs and requires here. Finally, you see Saints skipping out neutral and Dala. They go down, and just like that, it only took one fight, it only took 1 minute. Saints are going to take the second map and go on to match point.
Oh, you have to feel for Cheers, right? This is the round that they are supposed to be better suited for. The BAP and Zen is a combination that should theoretically on paper work. But the routing from Saints is absolutely perfect because it's predictable. It's a predictable composition. The Zen with the Brig isn't working. Okay, well, we're playing defense. We've got to pull the BAP in. So what are we going to do? We're going to make sure that we just take that route, deny the Discord orb, and they're even able to catch on to Hades. And honestly, like at that point, when the Roadhog gets spotted out that deep into enemy territory, I would honestly have rather they just sacrifice him and keep those resources for the fight that's actually going on to point, right? Because Lamp gets thrown on out, they use so many different utilities try and keep that Roadhog up, but he still goes down, and that eats into the resources that they have. The second that Roadhog is gone and that sponge that's meant to be taking all of the brunt of the damage for the backline is removed, Lant doesn't come back on cooldown to be able to save any of the squishies afterwards.
Yeah, definitely an interesting approach, sending the Roadhog in like that solo, looking for like that opening pick, try to see if they can buy some time. I mean, in reality, buying time is the only way that you're going to get out of a situation like that they were in. But unfortunately, that's the kind of problem with Roadhog, and why you're probably not going to see as much of it as we did see, you know, in the past, because it's just so easy to run down and just force resources out as long as you can kind of play to that rush. But of course, that's 2 maps down. We're going to be going to a quick break. Allow some time for Cheers to figure out, okay, what do we need to change? We'll talk about what those options are in just a bit. We'll see you then. Two of the fastest maps out of the way. Hopefully, though, a little bit of time in the break has allowed Cheers to find a way to get back into this one, though. We're going to be going to Rialto. Moxie, obviously, we talked a little bit before the break about Circuit. There is something that we have to bring up now, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Like, you're a team that really wants to be able to push this Zen company. You're thinking, okay, yep, soon, map 3, that's where we're going to turn it around, guys. 100%, we're going to get to go Circuit. Circuit's not on the map. It's like you have 4 rows in front of you, and each of them just leads to pain and more misery, and you just have to pick one and really hope that there's not a well-coordinated 5-person dive waiting behind the door.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of those maps too where we look at, okay, obviously if Cheers wants to keep going this direction, there is some elements you know, especially on first point, on defense, and there are some maybe stages later on, like especially on their attacking phases, where we can see them get a tremendous amount of value from the Zenyatta, especially if they can break through that first point. But it's all about getting that setup, and it seems like they've had a lot of struggle in getting into position in the first place before Saints is already breathing down their neck. I mean, just jumping on top of them within seconds that they are in the positions that they want to be in. You saw that back on the control map, and I expect that it's going to look a little bit more like that. Obviously, we saw it again on Blizzard World, but that was a little bit one-sided there. I think we'll see them enter back into that kind of map one, round one style of stuff that we saw.
Yeah, I think that is going to be my biggest question and my biggest worry about this composition that continues sort of in the series moving forward, is that are we going to see them be able to rotate around a team that are just running so many mobile pieces, right? The Winston has so much high mobility, the Lucio can just allow the team. There's a reason why Lucio and Kiriko are regarded as sort of S tier in terms of the healing department. Kiriko has maybe fallen a little bit with some of the nerfs that have come to her in terms of things like Suzu, but Kitsune Rush is still probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest ultimate in the game at just being able to immediately push neutral back into your favor because of all of the damage that you do during it, and the fact that you can just hyper speed boost up some of your ultimate charges in the middle of it. But Lucio definitely retains that S tier. The fact that he just has that ability to be able to push these teams into position and cut off all of these rotations from the other side, and that is something that, as you said, Cheers have suffered from because they're wanting to set these places into position. The problem is that because it takes them so long to actually get this comp to be where they want to be, it's very obvious when they start these rotations where they want to end up. And a lot of the time, people will tell you it's not about the journey, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. At this point, it's definitely about the destination, because unfortunately, when we see those rotations start to happen because of how slow they take without a lack of a Lucio, it's not just obvious to us, it's obvious to Saints as well, and very quickly they're able to adapt and make sure that Tree is sitting perched ready in position with a railgun to meet them when they pop up on the other side.
Being ways that they can just take you out of the equation, because look, Cheers, obviously they're going to spend a lot of their resources compositionally and in play trying to deal with the dive, trying to deal with Mikey, trying to keep King off of them. Obviously, Vega and CJ are going to be going forward with it, but at all times, you still have one of the best Western talents able to just completely erase you at range at any point. So that is definitely one of the big struggles that I think teams are going to have. However, in Cheers' favor, something that we, obviously we're kind of talking about circuit and stuff and what might help them out on a map like that. Well, there are some things that we could see them employ here as well in Rialto, and you see Love kind of going back and forth between that Widow looking for that opening pick here and there. This is a player that at range, I don't know if there are very many players that you would count on outside of him or above him, and I'm just looking to see that one moment where Love can kind of take things over. Unfortunately, it's not going to be now.
Yeah, there goes the dive. Neutral isn't actually the target this time around, it's Dollar. And without that break, there goes your backline protection. Cheers are going to have to get super aggressively. They've actually been able to keep Saints away and keep Neutral alive. They've got a really nice crossfire set up, pushing Saints back into the courtyard. Really nice pulses coming out from Tap to just keep that pressure, make sure that Tree is not able to sit in the backline using this Diva mech to be able to build railgun charge at absolute hyper speed. Love just tapping away, trying to find any position. Does have 90% of charge, doesn't manage to find the shot to land onto Vega, and as a result, King has been able to worm his way into the backline. There's Vega yet again, providing the assist to be able to make sure that the kill goes through onto the Zen.
Look at compositionally how much focus is just being placed here. We're going to be seeing the fight actually unfold. Saints just diving in, and again, no problem dealing with Cheers, but just kind of going back to it. Look how much is expended in terms of what they have available to them resource-wise in dealing with Mikey, or just taking Mikey out of the equation, where you have obviously the Zen, the Brig, you have the Echo now as well, you have that Diva. I mean, so much of this on paper should be good at dealing with Mikey, but it's just the holistic picture here that is the issue, right? Saints just as a collective is the problem.
And it feels like they're everywhere all at once. Look at the positioning where they were in that last fight, right? They start off in main, and then Vega is still actually able to go all the way around Mega Pack and the side of the building to catch on to the rotating members of Cheers who were looking to pincer and sandwich Saints into that courtyard angle and just herd them away from that payload so it can get around this first corner, because this is where we see teams struggle to be able to keep that payload moving. Now you're going to have to try and push into a Sojourn that's already set up. CJ's got a Kitsune Rush the second you show your face, and Neutral hasn't been able to build up the Transcendence to deal with it. They're immediately pushing forward aggressively before Cheers have the means to be able to sustain through, and as a result, Cheers are losing the fight.
Like that, Saints once again pick it up, but Cheers have built up their economy to a state where they might have a decent shot coming into this next fight. I mean, this could be an explosive engagement where Cheers just decide, okay, look, we've got everything, we need to buy some space, let's actually get something going. But the problem here is that with the cart in the position that it's in, even if you... Yeah, there's another fight that you have to contend with. And yes, Saints, they're down in economy. But if Vega actually tries to hold this, so they just let Cheers come out explosively, throw through the field with this, Saints are going to be in a great spot. So Saints already, they're going to be down Vega. So, I mean, Cheers, there's no question in pulling ults. You're not getting one outside of trees, and they're going to actually go ahead and win this fight as expected. And 3 of their ultimates used in the process. So now Saints can re-engage, they can go toe-to-toe with the support ults. We'll have to see if maybe King can find a full spam, if Tree can...
Tree. Oh, that's mean. You thought you had to worry as a Zen before, now there's a Sombra coming into the mix. They know that they're going to be outside of that ultimate economy, so they're going to deny Cheers' ultimate economy. Tree is just coming in to hack and make sure that Neutral isn't able to get this Transcendence off. There's the Zen! The hack goes through, but it doesn't last long enough. Transcendence is able to keep Neutral alive, but it does mean that the backline was so preoccupied keeping the Zen alive, they lose Dollar. Hades has to drop that self-destruct to be able to try and buy the mech back, and all the while Saints are just pounding Cheers at all angles. Tap taking a lot of damage, but there's no traditional hit scan now in place, and as a result, the Echo stays alive and keeps that burst damage pumping.
Still, Cheers have to make sure that they play the objective here, because Hades is going around trying to make some space for them. Finally makes his way back over to the payload, but Mikey just bullying everybody, and now gonna make it even worse, going primal and trying to take Neutral out of the picture. He's gonna be successful in doing so. Actually, not gonna be successful in doing so. Neutral will take him out. And just like that, Saints are now without Tree and without their tank, and now they're trying to turn the fight. When they rush, it's not going to be the answer that they were looking for. They need respawns to turn this one.
Mikey's coming back with the Doomfist. Vega was actually able to land the Sound Barrier to keep the sustain, and it forces Neutral into using that Transcendence. Dollar gets hacked super close to the rush, but in the confusion with how long overtime had been burning, they step off contesting the cart, and Hurix, it has been 0 days. It's been 0 days since we've started Pro-Am. It's been 0 days since we've last seen a letter number. Oh, a fitting way to potentially end the day.
In this department, so unless it's like an obvious one, I'm always just kind of of the opinion that, look, you know, there are situations where you get knocked off, it's not your fault, or you weren't going to win that fight, so what's the point in calling it, you know what I mean? So I'm going to be a little bit, I'm going to be a little bit more laissez-faire in terms of just throwing that one out there. But either way, the end result is the same. Saints have, for a second time in a row, gotten a full hole. So not looking great for Cheers here, especially given the fact that Saints, once again, coming out with that rushed style of composition, that dive, whatever you want to call it, where Cheers have still not exactly found that answer. And I don't suspect that they're going to be able to turn things around as rapidly as they obviously need to, because, I mean, this is match point right here.
Yeah, it feels as well like Mikey was just instrumental in that last round too. Yeah. Like, the turning point is when Cheers have all 5 of their ultimates, but they have to invest afterwards, and even then, Mikey is able to just push that time bank down to below a minute and a half, so that Cheers feel like they have to invest so many ultimates to be able to get back onto that cart, and it eats into their economy in the fight that comes afterwards, and as a result, they're not able to bruiser their way through. But Now they have to pull off the full hold if they want to continue in this series. We've got a Mercy coming through from Dollar. Neutral is once again going to be more of a target. The fact that Tree's even coming out on the Genji shows how confident Saints are in this dive from coming through. They've spotted where the Zen's positioned. They know that Love is on the Widow. The deflect comes out, connects onto the volley. Disco does find the Genji, but they now have the flank route. Cap with the beam is able to laser down Vega, and Saints not running that Mercy are going to have to be a little bit more hesitant about how they want to try and go for this dive, as Hades just bruises his way through as a little bit of a distraction, buying more time away from Saints to be able to set up and allowing Tap to be able to push his way into that backline with that Mercy damage boost and take down Tree, which is the main target that you have to be concerned for.
And now that Tap has Bala kind of helping things out, and the fact that composition that Tree came out with initially didn't really have an answer for something like Hades just kind of bowling his way through. Now it actually does. Tree is over onto the Sombra. There's a lot of different ways that they can actually deal with some of these other pieces, other aspects of the composition, and look how chaotic things are getting now, where King has actually found allowance to come alive. 2 kills make it 3 now as Saints easily dispatch Cheers in one of the longest fights I think we're going to see in Pro-Am qualifiers.
Potentially the last fight that we get to see of this matchup, is Tree is literally just sitting on Cheers' spawn waiting to see if he can catch anyone who tries to contest. Let's Hades go. Who is he waiting for? Oh, it's neutral. It's always neutral. Of course it's neutral, but neutral's actually able to take Mikey out. Love with the headshot connects onto CJ. Dollar with the Valkyries keeping everyone nice, healthy, and topped up, and is even able to get the resurrection to connect onto the Zen, but that means that you're away from the Echo, at least for a moment. Heal does come through. Tap having to use the duplicate to be able to keep themselves alive. And Saints with an ultimate burnt out are going to be more than happy. They still have 1 minute and 47 seconds to play around with. And Hades, while holding on to the mines, has to be worried about when the EMP from Tree comes through, because that Sombra is immediately going to connect onto the Hammond.
Just like that, both of those characters that are just controlling the sky are eliminated, and on top of that, you see both the portals already one extended by Saints. Mikey is now able to kind of just deal with everybody that's trying to come back from the respawn. Cheers, they're going to be taken all the way back as far as they can go, and in the meantime, on the point, it is just a question of whether or not Saints can deal with Hades, and so far, they're getting close, but they have to find that kill. In the meantime, Saints have dealt with that backline that we talked about before, with Mikey just battering everyone, and just like that, it's 3-0. Certainly a better showing at the end there for Cheers, but ultimately it was a full hold. It was 3-0.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, it's like it worked for a while. Like, you saw that Hades was able to be that distraction tactic that a lot of hamsters are trying to be at the moment, so that you can set up for your DPS to have a little bit more space to be able to play around with, especially punishing the fact that when we saw Saints roll out, they didn't have traditional hit scan, which tells me that the Echo is going to have a little bit more freedom. This is by far one of the most successful defense rounds that we saw from Cheers coming out. But a simple swap from Tree onto that Sombra, and then again playing that space control. King and Tree being able to just operate in so many different angles, Vega using that speed amp to be able to make sure that they can contest very quickly, find that pick, punish the fact that the Zenyatta healing is very, very slow, so that you can just burst in one clip through with that Tracer, with that Sombra, and then immediately be able to relocate straight back to where another fight has already broken out. And so even though Saints are playing very split in terms of different pockets of players, they really still feel united. At any one moment, they are able to sort of mesh together and Voltron their way through into a 5-man mega boss that is waiting on the payload with a sound barrier to be able to make sure they have all of the sustain to just keep themselves healthy for that last fight.
Yeah, definitely a good first look at those two teams. Saints obviously came into this as one of the top teams, or the expected top teams. We'll have to see if that pans out for them. Obviously, this was winner's side of the bracket, so Cheers have opportunity left ahead of them to see if they can work their way through that one. But before we move on to match number 2, something that we always like to do in Contenders here is have a winner's interview. We're going to have that set up just after this break, so stay tuned. For that on the other side. See you then.